Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Napoleon Bonaparte, Part 2, Rapid Rise to Power in the French Army. We stopped last time in 1793. Napoleon and his family were refugees in Marseille, France, because they'd had to leave Corsica because of the civil war there and the political chaos. And Napoleon was on the losing end in his conflict with Paoli. They had to leave. They were refugees in France from Corsica. His uncle Fesch entered the silk business. His brother Joseph married the daughter of a wealthy silk merchant. Napoleon was traveling with the French army in Nice, the Rhone River, and Toulon. He was observing. The rich people of Toulon were afraid of Robespierre and invited the English to come to protect them. The English came and took Toulon, and there was a plan to drive the English out of Toulon, France. Napoleon's family in the Toulon area were political refugees. Napoleon said that he had nothing but his education and ambition. His family were in La Villette, a village outside of Toulon. Napoleon was organizing gunpowder convoys for the French army. The British, Spanish, and Neapolitan troops had taken Toulon in August 1793, and Napoleon was involved in the retaking of Toulon. He had adopted the French version of his Italian name, Napoleon Bonaparte. He'd been a top math student, admitted to an elite military academy in Paris, France, became an artillery officer. He graduated at age 16 in 1785. Napoleon was 5'7", which was an average height in the early 1800s. He had a reputation for being short because his guards were very tall for his protection. 1793, France was at war with the European countries. Napoleon was an artillery commander at the siege of Toulon, France, the French city that had been occupied by British troops. Napoleon's plan to attack the English in Toulon with an artillery attack. Toulon was in that attack. Napoleon was wounded. He was involved in his first victory in war at Toulon. The rich panicked and fled. It was the beginning of fame for Napoleon because he played an important role in the victory at Toulon. He was promoted to brigadier general. His job had been He had a job to fortify the big guns on the Mediterranean coast from Toulon to Nice. Robespierre fell. Napoleon was arrested. He was 25. He was connected to Robespierre's brother, and he faced the possibility of execution. Backing up his plan to capture the hill, dominating the harbor, and force the British to evacuate. In the assault of Toulon, Napoleon was wounded. The French retook the city. He was promoted to brigadier general at age 24 and put in charge of France's army of Italy. He had a plan to attack Sardinia. He established an 80-man arsenal at Toulouse to make cannons and cannonballs and get horses. He was busy imploring, complaining, and raging. He was energetic and paid attention to detail involving getting sandbags for the siege of Toulon. They assaulted the fort near Mulgrave. In that assault, Napoleon was wounded by an English gunner who rammed a pike into Napoleon's left thigh. There was a possibility that his leg would be amputated, and he was near death for the first of many times in battles. Napoleon had great physical courage. November 23rd, they captured Fort Mulgrave. Napoleon repaired the spiked guns quickly. December 17th was the attack of Toulon. Napoleon's horse was shot from under him. Toulon was taken. Guns were trained on the Royal Navy in the harbor, and the British evacuated Toulon. Napoleon was praised for the victory at Toulon. December 22nd, he became a brigadier general. Being involved in the taking of Toulon gave Napoleon confidence. Opportunity came in the French Revolution to men who could get things done. Napoleon was a general at age 24. February 7th, 1794, he was appointed artillery commander of the Army of Italy, the campaign against the Kingdom of Piedmont in northwestern Italy. In that summer of 1794, he was in Nice and Antibes. He courted Eugénie Desirée Clary, the daughter of a dead royalist textile and soap millionaire. Desiree's sister Julie had married Napoleon's brother Joseph August 1st, which ended the family's financial trouble. 1794, in April, Napoleon submitted a plan to the Committee of Public Safety for an invasion of Italy via Piedmont. There was a need to conquer Austria and northern Italy. There was starvation in Paris. Half the population were living on potatoes. The Jacobins failed to deliver food or peace. As we said, on July 27th, Maximilien Robespierre, a top leader in the French Revolution, was overthrown and executed. He was the leader of the Reign of Terror. Napoleon was connected to Augustin Robespierre, Robespierre's brother. This put Napoleon under suspicion. August 9th, he was arrested in prison at Fort Carre in Antibes for 10 days, and he was released for lack of evidence and the fact that he was needed in the army and had been effective at Toulon. However, in Paris, he was shunned and depressed, had an uncertain future. He yearned to own a home. There was a new minister of war who wanted a new commander for the Italian front, and Napoleon was summoned. He was knowledgeable about the Italian coast and frontier. It was the turning point of his career. He was 26. He would be busy for the next 20 years. March 3rd, Napoleon sailed to Marseille to capture Corsica and failed. He was defeated by the British Navy. He was weak at sea. He was ordered to command the artillery at Brest. On May 9th, he went to Paris looking for a better position. He was unemployed and enjoyed Paris, the social life there, public lectures and opera. He wanted to start a family. June of 1795, the British landed a force at Quiberon Bay near Saint-Nazaire. Napoleon obtained a position with the Historical and Topographical Bureau of the War Ministry to coordinate French military strategy. He learned about supply, support, logistics, and military strategy. Napoleon was a genius. His genius was grueling hard work. August 23, 1795, France had its third constitution since the fall of the Bastille. A bicameral legislature was created, a council of 500, and a council of elders, an executive 5-man directory. Austria attacked September 20th. The enemies of France were smuggling weapons into Paris, and there was an insurrection. Paul Barras was in command of the Army of the Interior. Napoleon was in second in command of the Army of the Interior. He was given the command to crush the revolt. Napoleon fired on the civilians in Paris with cannons at the entrance of Rue Saint-Nicaise and other places. Napoleon said, quote, "Good and upstanding people must be persuaded by gentle means. The rabble must be moved by terror. Use grape shots on the civilians." And Napoleon said, quote, "If you treat the mob with kindness, these creatures fancy themselves invulnerable. If you hang a few, they get tired of the game and become as submissive and humble as they ought to be." And he fired on the mob. 300 French people were killed in Paris. Napoleon called it the whiff of grape shot. The Paris mob was no factor in French politics for the next 30 years. Napoleon was self-confident. He had prevented civil war. He was promoted. He had an income of 48,000 francs a year, good money. His family was financially secure for the next 20 years. He was in charge of confiscation of all civilian weapons. This led to a meeting with Josephine Beauharnais. Josephine had been born in Martinique in the Caribbean. She moved to Paris, France in 1780 at age 17. She had blackened stubs of teeth from chewing sugarcane as a child. Therefore, she kept her smile closed to conceal her blackened teeth. Her first husband, Alexander, was Alexander Beauharnais. Her husband had been arrested in 1794 in the Reign of Terror and executed because he was from the nobility. Josephine was also arrested in the Reign of Terror. She had a terrible experience in prison. Josephine had good taste in music and the decorative arts. She received callers all day and enjoyed lunches with her many girlfriends. She had a closed-mouthed smile. Josephine sent her 14-year-old son Eugene to ask for the return of his father's sword, at Napoleon's headquarters. In March of 1796, Napoleon married Josephine de Beauharnais. He was 26, she was 32. She was a widow. Her husband had been executed in the French Revolution. Josephine herself was imprisoned by Robespierre and the Jacobins. Napoleon later remarried, he divorced Josephine because she never bore him children. Later, Napoleon remarried Austrian royalty, hoped for political reasons and hoping for an heir, which he did receive. Some say that Josephine was the love of Napoleon's life. Others would say it was Countess Waluska, a Polish mistress of his. Napoleon sent Josephine love letters during his military campaigns. 2 days after his marriage, he left Paris to take command of the neglected French army of Italy. Napoleon became influential in French politics. In the years to come, he founded 2 newspapers, one for the troops and the other for the people of France. In Italy, Napoleon defeated the Austrians, Sardinians, and Neapolitan forces and captured Rome. Italy was not unified at that time, but Napoleon's victories led to the end of the war of the First Coalition against France and a Treaty of Campo Formio between France and Austria. So backing up again, he was busy planning this invasion of Italy. He believed in the importance of Turkey and the Bosphorus fighting Russia. As we said, there was chaos in Paris. The mob attacked the government. Napoleon gave the order to fire on the people, and the mob dispersed. Napoleon had power and money to help his family. He had met Josephine, who was born in Martinique, Josephine Beauharnais, a widow. Her husband had been executed in the French Revolution, and Josephine had spent time in prison. He fell in love with Josephine and decided to marry her, or they decided to marry. Josephine was from nobility, French nobility, and Napoleon was from Corsican nobility. Napoleon wanted an heir. He wanted a son. So they got married. To destiny was inscribed in their wedding rings. 2 days after their wedding, Napoleon left for Italy. He went to Nice to take command of the French army there. He could see Corsica in the distance in the Mediterranean Sea, but he was losing interest in Corsica. He had dreams that were far bigger. As he said, this is 1796, he visited Josephine. They fell in love. Josephine was well connected in French society. March 9th, 1796, Napoleon and Josephine were married in a civil ceremony. Napoleon was 6 years younger. He was given command of the army of Italy. His project was to lift the army of Italy out of its lethargy. He left Paris March 9th. He was 26 years old. The philosopher Goethe wrote, quote, "So divine an illumination is always linked with youth and productivity, and in very truth, Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the most productive men that ever lived." Napoleon's challenge was the Alps mountains. Hannibal had crossed the Alps. Napoleon decided to go around them. His enemies were asleep in their winter quarters, the Austrians and Sardinians, and small Italian states in the northern Italy. They were not expecting an attack until the snow melted. The French soldiers were hungry. He praised them. He had patience, courage. He inspired his troops to fight. To reach the fertile plain of northern Italy where there was food, he said they would receive honor, glory, wealth, and food. French troops were grumbling. They needed boots. They saw this Corsican as a foreigner with faulty French. At first, he was unpopular with the troops. The resources he was given at the beginning were 24 mountain guns, 4,000 underfed horses, and food for 30,000 men for 1 month on half rations. Napoleon built a road. He suppressed a mutiny. He used speed and he believed that speed and boldness were more important than an elaborate strategy. Napoleon said that a general's most important talent was to know the mind of the soldier to gain his confidence. Napoleon radiated confidence. He demanded information. When he arrived in Nice, the army was in no state to move. They were freezing. The men had no overcoats. They had no meat to eat for 3 months, and bread was irregular. The men were shoeless. They had not been paid in months, and there was talk of mutiny. March 28th, Napoleon threatened the corrupt army contractors. 1796, Napoleon in 9 months sent 800 letters. On April 1st, Napoleon got 5,000 pairs of shoes that were delivered for the soldiers. April 2nd, Napoleon moved his army headquarters to Albenga in the Gulf of Genoa. He was preparing to fight. He fought the Austrians at the Battle of Montenot. It was a victory, his first victory in the field when he was in command. The French armies were victorious when they arrived at the plains of Piedmont, northern Italy. It was springtime. The Alps had been crossed. There was truce with Sardinia. Napoleon bluffed with overwhelming force that he did not have, and it worked. French troops were amazed. For the next few weeks, Napoleon achieved victory after victory. In the spring of 1796 in northern Italy, Napoleon was young and healthy. He spent long hours on horseback, but did not get tired. He could sleep and wake at will. The French Revolution was giving opportunity to young men. The French Revolution promoted the idea of equality, the importance of what a man can do and not his birth. Napoleon's opposing generals were old, weak, and came from noble families. Charles was a Habsburg archduke. The Austrian Beaulieu was 72 years old. General Colley suffered from gout and had to be carried. Alvinci was in his middle 60s. The King of Sardinia was an old man. Napoleon's chief of staff for 20 years, Berthier, was 42 years old, and he was the oldest on Napoleon's staff. Napoleon's staff came from the dregs of society. Napoleon turned them into heroes and princes. He recommended for promotion only those who displayed courage. He dismissed generals who were good for office work but not war. He did not criticize those he defeated in war. France had a people's army. The Austrian army, they spoke 6 different languages. In the French army, they were united, speaking French and fighting for a world revolution. The French were fighting the kings of Europe and their banker backers who hated the French Revolution. Napoleon's conquest was bringing liberty. He proclaimed to the people of northern Italy that he was bringing them freedom from the Austrian Habsburg family. He appealed to the oppressed masses, young people who longed for freedom. Malcontents welcomed the French army. Napoleon was an Italian speaker. He was the herald of liberty and equality in Italy. The victory at Montenot raised morale. The French army spoke one language, and the Austrians many languages, so that gave an advantage to the French. French army was living off the land. Napoleon was very good at getting the army to march. Napoleon said that youth was necessary for command. What was needed was high spirits, daring, and pride. Napoleon confiscated the great art of northern Italy, which he sent to Paris for the Louvre Art Museum. Napoleon understood the importance for the French army to behave and not alienate the local people. He fought against looting among his soldiers. He would have soldiers and officers shot for looting. He was skillful at building civic pride for the new order in Italy. He said to the people of Italy that he would respect their property, customs, and religion. He talked to them of Athens, Sparta, and Rome and their glorious past, the Roman Empire. He gave great speeches to his men before battles. He was very effective and motivational. There was no more talk of mutiny. Another victory was at Lodi. That was important. Napoleon was gaining confidence. On May 11th, Napoleon wrote to the Directory and said he hoped to take Milan. He knew that winning battles was giving him power over the Directory. May 15th, he arrived in Milan. Napoleon was inspired by history. He knew the history of each region he entered. He understood because of all the studying he had done. He understood the power of words for victory. He talked of Brutus and Scipio from the Roman Empire. He inspired with his talk of the memory of the Roman Empire. He inspired the people and his troops. He understood the power of imagination to inspire people. He combined military victories with writing to political and military leaders to increase his power and achieve victory and have achievement. The directors in Paris feared Napoleon's success and confidence. They hated him. He could do things. He was popular. He was a skillful diplomat. He signed a peace treaty with Sardinia. The directors sent Napoleon a partner, Kellerman, to share command, hoping to weaken him. Napoleon defeated the Austrians at the Battle of Lodi on the Adler River. Napoleon was very confident. He believed himself to be an exceptional man and had ambition to do great things. In Milan, Napoleon received writers, editors, aristocrats, scientists, academics, intellectuals, and artists. He hoped to unify Italy. He appealed to the Italians and to kindle Italian nationalism. He wanted to create a new Italian political culture based on the ideals of the French Revolution, which prized meritocracy and free thinking. The Italians saw in Napoleon and the French better government than the Austrians had given them. Napoleon in Italy ended feudalism, brought religious tolerance and freedom for Jewish people. He needed the support of the Italians to win the war and win the peace. He promoted learning. He ended the power of the Catholic Church and nobles who fought against real learning. He wrote to the directors and said he refused to share command with Kellerman. The directors gave in because they feared him. The people of Milan were amazed to see Napoleon, a thin little man, riding a regular white horse and weary-looking French soldiers. Napoleon met in Milan a reception committee. He listened politely to their greeting, and then he spoke one sentence, wishing the Lombards well. People were impressed. Napoleon in Milan was not arrogant. He was resolute. He had a force of will under which all must bend. He was the master of the knowledge of men, the ruler's art. The French soldiers wore patched scarecrow uniforms. A hot bath was Napoleon's one luxury. A hot bath would refresh and soothe his nerves. Napoleon in Milan told the leaders there that they had the freedom to pick 50 men to rule. They would receive new laws. He would respect their local customs and protect Lombardy from the Austrians. In Milan, everyone wanted to comply with Napoleon's wishes. They saw he was bringing good government. He was confident of greater victories to come. He missed his wife Josephine and wanted her to come to Milan. She did not come. Josephine was enjoying life in Paris, enjoying going to parties there, and did not want to come to an army camp. Josephine wrote that maybe she was pregnant and couldn't travel, and Napoleon accepted that explanation. Napoleon asked his brother Joseph to visit Josephine, and Joseph convinced Josephine to visit Napoleon in Milan, northern Italy. So Josephine did come to Milan, but Napoleon was away fighting a battle near Verona. And then he came to Milan, and they had 2 days together, Napoleon and his wife Josephine. His biographer, Emil Ludwig, wrote that Napoleon's volcano overwhelmed Josephine. June 26, Josephine left Paris for Milan. As we said, her brother Joseph came. Joseph came to help with negotiations with Livorno, Parma, and Rome. Joseph was good at diplomacy. Napoleon said, quote, "Nothing is lost while courage remains." After a military setback, Napoleon inspired his troops and said, quote, "It is astonishing what power words have over men." He laid siege to Mantua. It was important. He wrote to Josephine and sent her regards to her dog Fortune, who slept in bed with them. There was victory at Castiglione, 18,000 prisoners. In Modena, Napoleon gathered the deputies as far south as Bologna. He gave them a constitution, creating a new republic. Napoleon was busy with state building. 1796, he laid siege to Mantua, Italy, till February of 1797. He sent the Directory 2 million francs gold contributions from northern Italy. Mantua was captured. The Austrians were expelled, ending 300 years of Habsburg rule in northern Italy. Josephine wrote few letters to Napoleon, her husband. This disappointed him. There was a battle at the Adige River. Napoleon used cunning and trickery. He sent all his trumpeters, drummers, to the enemy's rear. The worried Austrians were panic-stricken, retreated, and were defeated. This was near the village of Arcola. Napoleon's picture was in all the shops of Paris. His success scared the directors, who were the legislative body of France. The directors feared losing their power. He gave them gifts. He sent money home. He sent 100 fine horses for the directors' carriages. He threatened Genoa, Venice, Tuscany, and Rome and Naples. Napoleon formed the Cisalpine Republic, the process of the unification of Italy. He wanted to create a united Europe. He was uniting the half-dozen small states in northern Italy. He was fighting the kings of Europe and their backers. He was friends with the peoples of Europe. He respected property, humanity, and religion. He sent paintings from Italy to the Louvre. He was fighting corruption in the French army. He wanted to shoot dishonest administrators. Napoleon ended the practice of flogging and torturing men to get secrets. As a diplomat, he used flattery and threats. 1797 in June, Napoleon had an armistice with the Pope. The Pope contributed 15 million francs to France. The great cities in Italy were held in check by awe of Napoleon's seeming invincibility. On July 1st, in Florence, Napoleon got the famous paintings by famous painters Rubens, Raphael, Titian, Van Dyck, and Rembrandt, which he sent to Paris for the Louvre. He was advancing toward Rome. Napoleon wanted peace with the Pope, Pope Pius VI. Napoleon wanted the busts of Junius Brutus and Marcus Brutus, two heroes from the Roman Empire. Napoleon said that the teaching of Jesus Christ was based on equality, and it was good for a country. This put him in conflict with the atheist Paris government. Napoleon assured the Pope that he was not Attila the Hun, and achieved peace with the Pope. He marched toward Vienna, turned north. He was able to negotiate peace with Austria using threats to terrify a dozen tottering patricians. As he said, Napoleon, he said to Vienna that he was the second Attila the Hun and was able to achieve peace with Austria. However, England remained his arch enemy because they had the money from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which made them powerful. The Pope wanted peace with Napoleon. February 17, 1797, the Pope ceded Romagna, Tolentino. There was a celebration in Paris, dances, banquets, and processions. 1796 was the first year of prints and engravings of Napoleon, the cult of personality. The victory at Montagnat was the first medal promoting Napoleon. Napoleon said that Europe was too small for him. He called it a molehill. He was interested in Asia. He spent the summer at Montebello Castle near Milan. The war was over. He was a statesman. His family came. He had mythical power, a man of destiny. His mother Letizia disliked Josephine. Napoleon was dignified, natural, and dressed simply. He had a journalist publicity agent. Poets, historians, artists, and scientists came to the castle, and Napoleon promoted music. The more military success he had, the less power the directors had, the Directory. There was high morale in the French army. Napoleon was able to achieve forced marches and move the army quickly to achieve military success. France was beginning to bring unity to Italy, which had been disunited for centuries when the Roman Empire broke up. The British evacuated Corsica in October of 1796. Paoli and his supporters went to Great Britain. Napoleon restored the Casa Bonaparte, which had been ransacked by Paoli's supporters in 1792. The fall of Mantua was a sensation in Paris. The trumpets sounded. It was glory. March 10, 1797, Napoleon started his northern campaign close to Vienna. He threatened the Austrian capital. The British were loaning money to Austria and France's other enemies. On April 2nd, the Austrians accepted his offer of armistice. French had killed and wounded 120,000 Austrians. Napoleon remained calm under pressure. He had the qualities of a leader. He was harsh when necessary, but he generally liked to give praise. He believed that esprit de corps was necessary for victory. Napoleon, for his soldiers, he gave them plays, songs, operatic arias, proclamations, festivals, ceremonies, medals, and victory in battle and war. Napoleon was approachable by the common soldier. He would listen to their cases and settle them quickly. He enjoyed interacting with soldiers. He would talk to them of the ancient world. He gave his soldiers a sense that their lives and deaths mattered. This resonated with French history. He said they were making history, taking part in an adventure, an epic splendor, and they would have the attention of posterity for centuries would be on their achievements. He asked the soldiers about their food and uniforms and shoes, their health, amusements, and pay. The common soldiers believed that Napoleon was on their side, and he was. He praised them. He upbraided doctors and considered them quacks. He was following the leadership of Julius Caesar. He sometimes would admonish his troops, but mostly praise them. He compared his soldiers to eagles and told them that their families and neighbors would honor them. The men were dedicated to Napoleon for life. Well, that concludes today's presentation. We'll continue next time with part 3 of the fascinating, inspiring, amazing life of Napoleon Bonaparte. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.